It certainly needs no introduction. My name is Mark Bezos, and you're all welcome to call me what my friends do. They usually just refer to me as Jeff's brother.
By the way, just so you know, it actually does go both ways. My brother has a TED Talk about small acts of kindness, being a volunteer firefighter, and it has millions of views. And every once in a while, somebody will stop me and say, I love your TED Talk about being a firefighter and small acts of kindness. And I usually, say, well, thank you, but that's really my brother, his TED Talk. But if I'm in a hurry, I just say thank you. So thank you.
Yes, absolutely. But if any of you do get confused, I'm the one with the smaller bank account to your left.
He's the big brother.
So, Jeff, before we get started, I think this is obviously a crowd of influential people who are starting out. I think we might as well just make the most of their time. I'm just going to dive right into this, if you don't mind.
Let's go.
So, you are captain of industry, Amazon.com, private spaceflight with Blue Origin, the Washington Post, levels of fame and wealth that are hard to comprehend. I guess one question that probably is at the top of everyone's mind is, if you had to choose one thing, what would you say is your favorite part of having me as a little brother? Because I've taken the liberty of writing down some thoughts.
I know the answer to this. And there are many things I love about having Mark as a brother, but what he just did is number one at the top of the list. When I am with my brother, I just laugh continuously because he is the funniest guy in my life.
Well, thank you. You're an easy audience, and I appreciate it.
I am actually an easy audience. That is true.
He is.
I am.
All right. So here's what we're going to do, if all of you don't mind. So. Yep. The fact that, a fireside chat among brothers, this is not unique for us. This is something that we do quite often. It's rare that we have, a couple thousand of our closest friends with us. Yeah. And it's also rare that we don't
do it in front of an audience, and we usually actually have a fire.
Yes, and bourbon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which we don't have now. But no. So, what we're going to talk about, the things that I'm going to chat with Jeff about, are not the sorts of things perhaps that you would hear in most interviews, because I don't, two pizza rules is not really my jam, so we're not going to talk about those things. But we do have a shared history. So what I really want to focus on is the influences and the inspirations that have led to some of the things, the foundation of what
this is a little intimidating. He knows way too much. It's.
So, and what I'd like to do is invite all of you to join in on what is some of our greatest hits, I guess, from my point of view. And because we have such a shared history, what I've done, much to Jeff's chagrin, is I've gone through and taken the liberty of pulling together a bunch of family photos. So I'm going to be throwing some of those up behind us, and just so that you guys can, sort of understand. So if we start talking shorthand, you'll understand what it is that we're referring to. So, all sound good? All right. So I am going to, and I appreciate your patience. This is not the sort of thing that I usually do, so I appreciate your patience. So we're just going to dive right into it. So when we were kids, we would spend every summer on our grandfather's ranch in South Texas. We called our grandfather Pop.
That's Pop.
There's Pop right there.
We were probably just fixing that windmill.
Yes, always fixing windmills.
Yeah.
Before you were climbing them and smashing bottles upon them, which you did recently in an Instagram video. So, one of the things that we would do, every summer, it was really a magical experience. There's little Jeff.
Yeah. That was my maximum cuteness right there. So, by the way, all downhill from there. That's a 1962 International Harvester Scout. We all learned to drive in that car.
That car.
Once you can drive that car, you can drive anything.
And then this is, so there's the two of us. That is Jeff teaching me how to open or close a gate, which doesn't seem like it would be that complicated, but I was having trouble with it.
Wire gap gates are tough.
And then this is
that's red. Well, that's Christina, our
Yeah,
sister.
that's our sister Christina.
But the horse
is red.
That's red. That's, yeah.
So I guess one of the things that we learned
There's
every
Pop,
summer.
yeah.
This is Pop again. So there was, as we alluded to with the windmills, there was always work to be done on the ranch. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I think we learned to value, and you've spoken about this in the past, is the role that resourcefulness, self-reliance plays.
For sure.
It's certainly on a place like the ranch. But can you talk a little bit about?
Well, so one of the great things that you learn, and first of all, we had a very fortunate, lucky childhood. We got to spend a lot of time with Pop and our grandparents, and you learn different things from grandparents than you learn from parents. It's just a very different relationship. I spent all my summers on his ranch from age 4 to 16, and he was incredibly self-reliant. If you're in the middle of nowhere in a rural area, you don't pick up the phone and call somebody when something breaks. You figure out how to fix it yourself. And so, as a kid, I got to see him solve all these problems and be a real problem solver. He even did his own veterinary work. He would make his own needles to suture up the cattle with. He would take a piece of wire, use a blowtorch to heat it up, pound it flat, sharpen it, drill a hole through it, make a needle. And some of the cattle even survived. And so, we learned a lot of things from watching him because he would take on major projects that he didn't really know how to do, and then figure out how to do them.
A good example of that is, you guys built a house.
Yeah.
I think he bought this out of a Sears catalog.
It was a kit house, and we built that thing. Somebody came out. It all showed up in big boxes, and a professional came out and poured the foundation, and then we did the rest of it. But I'm pretty sure that was quite a project.
In going
there are
through
you can see some of the cows there that didn't survive the procedure.
So, when I was going through these, it certainly I came across this photo, which.
Oh God, yeah.
I'm not exactly sure what it was you were doing here, but I'm almost positive
it looks
you're
like
doing
that,
it wrong.
Maybe that vent really pissed me off. I don't know. That's certainly.
Well, I think there's a couple of things here. First of all, OSHA would not be pleased with the way you're on that ladder, and it appears as though you're crafting a spear.
I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah.
So, I think that if you can talk a little bit. I know that there's this bulldozer in the background.
Yeah. That's a
funny part
D6
of
Caterpillar bulldozer that my grandfather bought used for $5,000, which is an enormous bargain. This thing, it should cost way more than that. The reason it was so cheap is it was completely broken. The transmission was stripped, the hydraulics didn't work. And so we spent basically a whole summer repairing it, and big giant gears would arrive by mail order from Caterpillar, and we would, we couldn't even move the gears. So the first thing my grandfather did was build a crane to move the gears. So that's that kind of self-reliance and resourcefulness.
And there's also there's a story that is somewhat legendary in our family. One of the things that Pop did one summer, it was a little out of character.
Oh, I know what story you're talking about. So he really actually was a very careful, conservative sort of person, not prone to crazy acts or anything. Kind of introspective and very introverted, quiet person. But one day he was all by himself. He had driven to the ranch, and he was at the main gate to the ranch, and he forgot to put the car in park. And so when he got to the gate, he noticed that the car was slowly rolling downhill toward the gate. He thought, this is fantastic. I have just enough time to unlatch the gate, throw the gate open. The car is going to drive right through, and this will be wonderful. He almost got the gate unlatched when the car hit the gate, and it caught his thumb between the gate and the fence post, and it stripped all the flesh off of his thumb. It was hanging there by a tiny little thread, and he was so angry at himself that he ripped that piece of flesh off and threw it in the brush, got back in the car, drove himself to the emergency room in Dilley, Texas, 16 miles away. And when he got there, they said, this is great, we can reattach that. Where is it? And he said, oh, I threw it in the brush. They drove back with the nurses and everybody, and they looked for hours for the thumb, and they never found that piece of flesh, something probably eaten it. So they take him back to the emergency room, and they said, look, you have two choices. You're going to have a skin graft for that, and we can sew your thumb to your stomach and leave it there for 6 weeks. That's the best way to do it. Or we can just cut a piece of skin graft from your butt and just suture it on, and it won't ever be as good, but the advantage is your thumb won't be sewn to your stomach for 6 weeks. And he said, I'll take option 2, just do the skin graft from my butt. And they did that. It was very successful. It worked fine. But the funniest thing about this story is that I have incredibly vivid memories, and we all do, of him. Definitely his mornings were completely ritualized. He'd wake up, eat breakfast cereal, read the newspaper, and shave with an electric razor for a really long time. Like, he would shave with that electric razor for like 15 minutes, and while he's eating his cereal, and when he was done shaving his face with that razor, then he would take 2 quick passes over his thumb because his thumb grew butt hair, which, by the way, did not bother him at all.
No. He was completely unfazed by it.
Unfazed.
So, thumb, butt hair aside, the value of resourcefulness, right, and self-reliance. How do you apply that to the work that you do on a daily basis? How do you?
Well, I think there are a lot of entrepreneurs and people pursuing dreams and passions in this kind. You always the whole point of moving things forward is you run into problems, you run into failures, things don't work, you have to back up and try again. Each one of those times when you have a setback and you back up and you try again, you're using resourcefulness, you're using self-reliance, you're trying to invent your way out of a box. And we have tons of examples at Amazon where we've had to do this. We've failed so many times. I always think of us as a great place to fail because we're good at it. We have so much practice. And just to give you one example, many years ago now, we wanted a third-party selling business because we knew we could add selection to the store that way. And we started Amazon auctions. Nobody came. I think maybe our mother is the only one who purchased something.
I bought a coffee cup.
You bought a coffee cup?
I did.
Okay, so there were 2 purchasers. And then we said, well, what can we do? We opened this thing called Z Shops, which was like fixed price auctions. Again, nobody came.
I didn't use that. And
then finally, each one of these failures is like a year and a half long. And so we're trying to invent new things. And we finally came across this idea of putting the third-party selection on the same detail pages, the same product detail pages that we had our own inventory on, our own retail inventory on. We called this marketplace, and it started working right away. So that resourcefulness of trying new things, figuring things out, what do customers really want, it pays off in everything. And it pays off even in your daily lives. How do you help your children? What's the right thing? My wife has a great saying. We let our kids use, even now they're 17 through 12, but even when they were 4, we would let them use sharp knives. And by the time they were, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8, we would let them use certain power tools. And my wife, much to her credit, she has this great saying. She says, I would much rather have a kid with 9 fingers than a resourceless kid. And which I just think is a fantastic attitude about life.
Luckily, you have resourceful kids with 10 fingers each.
Yeah, so far they have all their fingers.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah, exactly. And I know that resourcefulness is so important. You actually it was a prerequisite for the selection of a spouse, right? So this is in my 20s. This is way pre-Tinder, pre-Match.com, and so I had this. At a certain point, I decided I wanted to get married, and I had all my friends setting me up, and I had my list of criteria, and this was like good old-fashioned blind dates. I went on dozens of blind dates, and it turned out I kept meeting people who were professional blind daters, and I sort of became a professional blind dater. And so we would sit down, and most of the conversation was quickly about how, we're not right for each other, but how do you meet people? And it was actually turned into a very But when I was telling my friends my criteria, one of the ones that I would list was that I wanted a woman who could get me out of a third world prison. And my friends were like,
what are your future plans? You know, like what? And I said, no, it's just a visualization for somebody really resourceful, because I think that you don't want to go through life with teammates who aren't resourceful. And so you do want to go through life with people who, if you need, could get you out of a third world prison.
Hypothetically speaking.
Hypothetically speaking.
Yeah. So, so this is a picture from...
That's a recent photo.
Yeah, that was last summer, I think.
Yeah.
We were on a family vacation. And so this one jumped out at me because, you're doing McKinsey curls there with your wife, and you're looking a little buff. And so that, of course, made me think of this. Oh. Now, as internet memes go, Swole Jeff is pretty cool, right? So, if Swole Mark raced across the internet, I'd be pretty psyched. But, this got sent to me by so many people, variations of this, right? Oh my God, your brother looks awesome, your brother looks awesome. Yeah, I know. And then, but it confused me because, in all honesty, this is what I grew up with.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, right? So
that.
When you guys saw Swole Jeff, I was like, I was surprised too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this is...
Yeah, sexy, right?
Yeah.
I remember that. I am.
How old
that's
are you
a
here?
Halloween costume. I am I had some friends and we went as the fruit of the
no,
loom.
hold, wait. There you go.
There we go. That is. Yeah. The
They
chicks,
went as
the
lady
chicks-
killers.
Chicks loved that. They loved that. We were very successful in high school.
So as fitness goes, and then there was this guy who's like late '90s Jeff, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And your eating habits at this point in your life were not great.
No. This is you won't even believe this story. You're just going to have to believe me that I tell you this is true. When my wife and I got married, I had been eating a whole can for a couple of years. I had been eating for breakfast every morning a whole can of Pillsbury biscuits. So I would wake up in the morning, I would preheat the oven to 375. I would get out the baking sheet. I would crack open the Pillsbury biscuits, place them on there, and with butter. And I would eat the whole can. And I was skinny as a rail, and it was just. After watching me, so then we get married, and she watched me do this every morning as my spouse for like 3 months. And then she finally stopped me one day and she said, "Do you know what's in that?" And I was like, honestly, that wasn't even a concept for me, that there was something in food. That there was like I had never read a nutrition label in my life. I ate what tasted good to me. And so she kind of showed me the ingredients label, and we had a little very rudimentary discussion about nutrition, and I stopped eating the biscuits.
Well, I'm frankly very happy and somewhat surprised you survived all of that. We're glad you're still with us. So
she was incredulous. She couldn't believe it.
So one of the things I want to talk about, a question that we've talked about before, you were 30 years old in 1994 when you decided to start Amazon.com.
Mm-hmm.
You had a great job. I remember you had a great apartment on the Upper West Side.
I'd been married for a year.
You'd been married for a year.
I had not been eating biscuits for 9 months.
And I'm just, how did you go through making the decision to drop what was a very good job and take this chance? It all seems very obvious now, right? This many years later that it paid off, but at the time it was not obvious.
No, it wasn't. And I did do a lot of soul searching. I went to my boss at the time, and I really liked my job. And I told my boss I was going to go do this thing, start an internet bookstore. And my wife I'd already told my wife, and she's like, "Great, let's go." And I said to my boss, I was going to do this. He's like, this is a good idea. He says, I think this is a good idea, but it would be an even better idea for somebody who didn't already have a good job. And that sort of made some logical sense to me, and he convinced me to think about it for a couple of days. So I went away. I was really trying to get my head around how to think about this. And I think for me, the right way to make that kind of very personal decision, because those decisions are personal, they're not like data-driven business decisions. They are, what does your heart say? And for me, the best way to think about it was to project myself forward to age 80 and say, look, when I'm 80 years old, I want to have minimized the number of regrets that I have. I don't want to be 80 years old in a quiet moment of reflection, thinking back over my life and cataloging a bunch of major regrets. And I think that regrets, our biggest regrets, in most cases, you can murder somebody, okay, you'd regret that. But in most cases, our biggest regrets turn out to be acts of omission. It's paths not taken, and they haunt us. We wonder, what would have happened? I loved that person, and I never told him. And then they married somebody else. I didn't do this. And so that's the frame of mind that I put myself in. And once I did that, once I thought about it that way, it was immediately obvious to me. I knew that when I'm 80, I would never regret trying this thing that I was super excited about and failing. If it failed, fine. I would be very proud of the fact when I'm 80 that I tried. And I also knew that it would always haunt me if I didn't try. And so that would be a regret. It would be a 100% chance of a regret if I didn't try, and basically a 0% chance of regret if I tried and failed. So I think that's a useful metric for any important life decision.
And this is our sister took this photo. And she was, I don't quite know why she thought this was a momentous occasion. This is you and Mackenzie.
Yeah, we're about to take off driving across the country to start Amazon, go to Seattle.
And that's your
my
dog.
yellow lab, Kamala, named after a Star Trek character.
We're so happy to have these family photos, but we can't for the life of us figure out why Christina bothered to take them, but we're so glad she did. And then, she also was smart enough to tell you to leave the dog.
Yeah, she saved us probably because we were going to drive across the country with the dog, which was probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
So she said, why don't I keep the dog? And after you guys get settled, I'll send you the dog.
So a question I have is, we just talked about the fact that, there was certainly no guarantee that Amazon was going to work.
No, there never is any kind of startup